Hey, I'm J.R. Lay. Welcome back to another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. There is a turf war that's happening right now. It's been unfolding. It's been unfolding at many financial brands, even more so right now as marketing dollars get even tighter. You see, brand teams are fighting for awareness. Performance teams are chasing conversions. They both want results, but what often happens is they end up pulling in different directions. They end up competing for budget. They're competing for attention. They're competing for a seat at the table. But what if they're stronger together? What if they're better together? That's why in this episode, I'm joined by my co-host, Derek Krause, and we're going to explore how financial brand leaders can bridge the gap between art and science. It's a continued conversation that we're having. We're talking about collaboration over competition, testing over guessing, and how AI is continuing to change the game when it comes to optimization. So if you've ever felt stuck in this cycle of creating marketing creative that looks good, but it might not always perform, this one is for you. But before we get too far, I want to ask you a quick question. Are your marketing decisions being driven by data, or are they being driven by creative gut design? What you think looks good? Because if you're not testing, then you're just guessing. That's why my friends over at Metrify have created a very simple, very easy way for you to benchmark your website to see how it stacks up against other banks and credit unions. Text me right now, 832-240-1922. And in just 2 minutes, I'm going to show you how easy it is to uncover where you might be leaking leads, where you might be leaking loans, where you might be leaking deposits, so you can stop the leak, so you can stop guessing and start growing with confidence. Derek, we're going to continue our conversation that we left off on with our last episode, because we were just opening up a very important subject, bridging the art and science of marketing together. And I don't want the brand people, those that love the art of marketing, I don't want to lose them and just think that we're all in on the science. It is a bridging. It is a collaboration. And when you think about the word collaboration, it means, yeah, you have to cooperate, work well together, but there's also the co-creation too, because when you look at the science of marketing, it can actually make the art of marketing even that much better, which begs the question, how can brand teams and what we'll call performance teams collaborate instead of competing for internal resources, budget, attention, validation?
Yeah. So there is an art to marketing that is important, that I think will always be there. So to your point, it's not about eliminating the art of marketing, but rather you can enhance that by bringing in the science, because you still need creativity. Creativity is vital to marketing, and you have to create ways of how you're going to message something, how you're going to present it visually. You have to think in terms of the end user, who you're communicating to, what you need, how you're going to say it and present it to them in a way that resonates with them, and that requires creativity. And so I am not at all advocating for doing away with those things. The problem that I see is that part happens, and that's where it stops.
What do you mean?
I mean, someone has, I see this all the time with on websites for financial institutions. Someone will have an idea about how to make a part of their website better. They'll look at their homepage and say, well, if we just did this differently, then I think that's going to be better. But that's where it stops. So they have an idea about how to make, because that's where it always begins, is they think, if I do it this different way, it's going to be better.
And who has that idea? Is that someone from the marketing team? Is that someone from product? Is that someone from the executive? Is that someone from the board of directors?
It can come from any of those sources. The ideas abound. about how to do something differently or better. And uh, so having those ideas are important and it's good. The problem that I see is it's just as if, well, if you just execute on implementing the idea, done. The idea has been implemented. There is no more to do, and that's the problem because
So we check it off. So we make the quote unquote the subjective improvement.
yes,
Check that off the list, and then we go do the next thing. And I want to roll back, and this might actually make some people who are watching and listening laugh, because where does that idea, as you're talking through, I'm thinking, well, where do those ideas to make the quote unquote the homepage better or make the product page better? And I've heard it myself more times than I can count. And it's, well, we were looking at this other website, and it might be another bank or it might be another credit union website. We were looking at this website, could be the quote unquote the competition, and we want to do what they're doing.
mm-hmm.
And my question is, well, why?
Yeah.
Well, because we like the way it looks. And I'm like, why? And you start asking, and it's just a Socratic method of, well, why? And then you break it down, and then you realize that there's nothing of substance behind the why. It's more of a want. And when you start to remove all of the emotion to it, and they don't really have an answer, because the thing is, I diagnose that as R&D. And that's not research and development. Going out and looking at what other bank and credit union websites are doing, that's not research and development. That's rip off and duplicate. Because then the question is, well, how do you know what they have on their site is working? It could actually be doing more harm than good for your own website.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that so much among financial institutions. They look at what the others are doing, but the truth is, the others don't know if what they're doing is working either, because they're not measuring the impact.
Well, let's talk about what is working. And what I mean by that is bridging the art and the science, bridging brand and performance. Because if we think of, and we were talking about this before, the idea of a conversion funnel,
mm-hmm.
you can think of it as like three different levels. You've got brand, you've got demand, and then you've got expand. And you could look at it through different lenses. You got awareness, you've got consideration, purchase, adoption, and then advocacy, which is the model that we think through here. And I wrote Banking on Digital Growth around. But there's also the internal side of things, the relationship between people with culture. What do you see works well when financial brands start to build a culture? And maybe the culture just begins within the marketing team, but they build a culture of testing and iteration, which goes beyond of what you were talking through before. We want to make an update. We want to quote unquote make the homepage better or the product page better. And we check that off the list, and we don't come back and we test against, well, did it improve or did it not improve? What do we need to do to make this a cultural initiative here of testing and iteration?
Yeah, I think the cultural shift is measuring results. And I think with that has to come some humility to say, well, yes, I had this idea, but just because it was my idea doesn't automatically mean it's good. I've got to put it to the test and see if what I thought was good, what I thought made it better, actually did. And I know I've had some. So at this point, we've run 100 A/B tests with financial institutions, and a lot of ideas that I've had about how to make a website better have been good, and they've improved conversion. But then there've been other times like, oh, well, I guess that wasn't a good idea because the conversion rate actually went down as a result of that. And you've got to have the humility to put your ideas to the test and be willing to see, did this help? Did this hurt? Or did it do nothing?
Don't fall in love with your ideas. is maybe what I'm hearing, because it's like I think we do we fall in love, and I'll be the very first one to step in front of the line saying, listen, I can have 100 ideas, but I probably know that one of them is going to be a really good one. The other 99 are probably just the way that I have to think in my own mind to get to the one. But then you add the iteration, and then you add the testing, and then you add the objective ongoing, and I think that's the key, the iterative feedback. And it's like incremental. It's like, are we improving? And that point of incremental, it's like if you improve a conversion rate by 2%, there might be some who would say, well, that's not that much. Well, when you're talking, on scale of 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 visits to a website, a 2% conversion rate starts to reverberate, and then you start attaching a dollar amount to that. So you're gonna have to help me out on this.
Yes.
Let's just look at scale. Let's just say 100,000, 120,000, because if we said 10,000 visits per month for whatever page that is, and you multiply that by 12, that's 120,000, but then my math gets too hard to do in my head. So let's just keep it at 100,000 annually. If we got a 2% improvement through ongoing A/B tests, and we associated a dollar amount, let's just say $1,000 in annual net interest income, or $1,000 in additional lifetime value for an account holder, and a 2% improvement over the course of a year for 100,000 visits. What is 2% of 100,000? It's 2,000, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so 2,000. Then multiply that by 1,000. That's where my math gets a little wonky. Help me out.
Yeah. 20,000 or 2,000 times 1,000. 2 million.
2 million? Yeah. So we just add an additional $2 million in some sort of net interest income or some sort of lifetime value of an account holder with just a 2% conversion. These are the micro things here when we're talking about building a culture.
Yeah. And, honestly, from the A/B tests that we've seen, usually the increase in conversion rate that you get is way more than a 2% increase. Like I think so far this year with the A/B tests that we've done with clients, it's closer to a 100% increase. I think last year with all the tests we ran, it was like in the 60% increase. And so I guess there are two ways to talk about it. You can talk about a percentage increase or decrease, and then you can just talk about like the you go from 2% conversion rate overall to 4% conversion rate. So like a 2% lift, but that's actually a 100% increase. And that it can have a huge impact if you are constantly measuring the results that you're getting through your conversion funnel, seeing where then you can pinpoint where the opportunity for improvement is. Is it on the home page? Is it on the product page? Is it on the application? You need to know what needs to be optimized, not just optimize at random.
Yeah.
And then you can pull a lever to improve it, and it can have a huge impact.
I want to jump in because I can feel where someone who is watching or listening can be like, that's great. That sounds like a lot of work. Where do I even begin? Because and to bridge our last conversation, it's like we looked at these different points of traffic, of conversions or click to conversions, of converting on the application itself, and then of funding. And then if you take that, let's just say there are 3 points of measurement to keep things simple, as what we were talking about in our previous conversation. But then if you extrapolate that out over 5 different product lines, now you have 15 possible areas of focus. And I'm already overwhelmed as a financial brand marketing leader. My team is already overwhelmed. Our resources are already thin. And that's where it's like, okay, so we're moving into this whole new age of AI. We've got new capabilities at our disposal, and you're talking about this cultural shift of measuring, iteration, testing. Why is this? Why is now the time more than ever before? Because if I go back just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, this seemed like, I mean, this was a lot of work. It seemed like a lot of work. But now it doesn't have to be a lot of work.
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts there. So first, as far as the amount of work that it takes, it's actually, I mentioned this in our last conversation, the whole reason we built Metrify is because as we were doing this work, we actually found ourselves, we're like, man, it's way too hard to build these conversion funnels that we want to build with these other tools. It takes
you're cobbling all of these different tools together and trying to find these connection points. And if something breaks in one, then it breaks everything else. And then it's like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah. And I don't want to knock on Databox. I think Databox has a great product. We used it for a long time, but we did see that just setting up a single conversion funnel, it was cumbersome. It took too much time and effort to do it. And then when we got to the point of we saw an opportunity for improvement, we wanted to run an A/B test to figure out again if our idea was a good one that was actually going to move the needle. That has taken more time than we like. So the reason we built Metrify was to make it 10 times faster and easier to get that analytics and to do A/B testing. So you can actually, because when you just, it maybe, as you mentioned, maybe there are people listening to this that they feel like, man, this is a lot. How am I going to do this? And if all of this is foreign to you, I think like anything, something that's new that you're not very well acquainted with can feel overwhelming initially. But once you get into it, it's not that complicated. It's simply you're setting up these conversion funnels. And then if you've got the right tools in place, you can see amongst all those conversion funnels that you have, where's your biggest opportunity for improvement? You think about, here are the opportunities for improvement. Which of those should I focus on that's most important to my goals right now? Do I need more loans? Do I need more deposits right now? Pick an opportunity, and then you need to run a test. And there's we can get more into what that looks like to actually, and the point of testing is to make an improvement to that part of the funnel, and we can get into that, but it doesn't have to be a complicated thing. I think to your point, pretty much every financial institution that I've talked with where, they see the conversion funnels they should have set up and they see how A/B testing works. It's not beyond them. They can understand it. The perpetual thing that I hear is, like you said, well, we're so busy with everything else we already have going on that we just don't have time to do this. And to that, I would say one of two things. Well, first, are the activities that you're doing today, like maybe you need to cut some of those other activities, because from my experience, a lot of the marketing work that FI marketers are doing are not things where they can easily calculate the return on investment for those things. A lot of times they don't even have a mechanism for measuring ROI. What's beautiful about digital marketing is analytics and tracking abounds that does not exist outside of the world of digital marketing. So you can make decisions to say, well, this opportunity to improve this funnel on our website is worth this many dollars, and it's going to cost me this much money to improve it. And it's just a simple calculation at that point to say, well, yeah, then I'm going to focus on this thing, and you can actually measure ROI and the impact. And so if you're doing things that don't give you that, well, maybe you need to ditch some of those things and focus more on these digital marketing things that can get you that. Or alternatively, uh, I think part of the problem that marketing departments face is because they're not measuring results and they don't have any results to show to the C-suite, they're treated as a cost center rather than the activities they're doing actually bringing a return. And if you can show a return, then you could justify maybe hiring another person in your department to help run your scientific marketing efforts. Or you could hire a company that can help do the work for you, because you can justify it, because now it's not just a cost center, you're actually bringing dollars in the door.
And it becomes a true investment. And that's where, if I think about in banking on digital growth, my first book, one of the things that I wrote to was the banker's brain. And the banker's brain is a very smart brain, very analytical. It's left brain. It's looking at the numbers, the science, if you will. But then you look at like the marketing mind, the creative mind, it's more of the right mind. And it's a matter of perception. One is not better than the other. And I think this is where the collaboration and the culture comes back into play. And if I think about the conflict between marketing and the C-suite, or marketing and quote unquote the CFO, and where's the return? What gets measured gets improved, but what gets measured and reported begins to improve exponentially. And so there's a level of accountability that comes into play, which I understand. Like, if you're adding this other layer of accountability, well, then it's like, well, how am I going to be perceived? Because if, let's just go back to the point of what you were talking about before. I could fail. My conversion rate could go down. Well, what does that mean? Because this is the cultural context of this conversation here. What is the perception of failure within the organization? Because in a lot of organizations, banks and credit unions, failure is, it's frowned upon because of the risk aversion, the loss aversion that is naturally inherent, where you're looking at this and I'm looking at this as a learning opportunity. Let's figure out what works and let's figure out what doesn't work, and let's do more of what works and stop doing what doesn't work, which we were talking about the context of time. How long should a test for iteration, for optimization? What is the ideal time to get feedback? Are we talking days? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months? How quickly can we look to iterate around a conversion funnel here?
Yeah. And so you're talking specifically about A/B testing.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. So maybe let me set the stage first for what an A/B test is, because in my conversations with financial institutions, a lot of them aren't really familiar with that, at least in the website context. Many of them are more familiar with it from an email marketing context, where they'll A/B test subject lines. It's the same deal on a website. Basically, you have an original version of your website, an original version of a page, and you have your conversion funnel set up. You can see how that page is performing. And if it's performing below average, not as good as you want it to, then this is where people start to have ideas. This is where the creativity comes in, ideas about how to make it better. And ideally, those ideas are more than just opinions. There are other tools that you can bring into the mix to help inform your ideas. So things like heat mapping or digging deeper into the analytics, or looking at a database of A/B tests that have been run in the past to inform things that have worked. So that's the context for you. It starts with bringing in those different data points and having an idea about what would make it better. And so now you take those ideas and you make changes to the original version of the page. You create a new variation of the page. And sometimes the variation can be small, can be minor differences. Sometimes they can be big. And side note, in our experience, if you want big results, you need to usually make big changes. You don't usually get big results from making small changes, unless something's like just broken. But once you've got the new variation, you now have variation A, that's your original, that's the control. And then you've got variation B, that's the new one. And the way an A/B test works is you run both of those on your website at the same time. So when a user, let's talk about it for an auto loan page. You're running an A/B test on your auto loan page. A person comes to your auto loan page, and A/B testing software is going to randomly either show them version A or version B. And then in your conversion funnel, when you have all these people that are visiting and they're getting either A or B, you're measuring which of those two versions led to more people starting and completing applications. So sorry. Now, all of that context, how long does it take? The answer is it's less about a fixed amount of time, and it's more about the amount of data that you're getting, because you need what you're looking for is statistical confidence. You want to know that A versus B, one is actually statistically better. And you've learned that from having enough data. So basically, the more people you have coming in to that A/B test and the more conversions you have, the shorter amount of time it takes to reach statistical confidence that B is better than A or vice versa. So if you've got a very highly trafficked page, like a home page, usually experiments on a homepage for a financial institution can be run very quickly. And when I say quickly, like usually you want to run an experiment for at least a week, so you get every day of the week just to account for some variation. But with the amount of traffic there, if you're seeing a significant difference in the conversions that you're getting in A versus B, and you got a lot of traffic, then it can be a very short amount of time. On the flip side, if you're dealing with a very small amount of traffic, and to give that a little more context, large amount of traffic, think thousands or tens of thousands of users. Small amount of traffic, it can be too small, where if you're only getting tens or a few dozen, it may not even be enough for an A/B test. You need at least a few hundred. But
sure,
the more traffic, faster it is. The less traffic, the fewer conversions. It could take months at that point.
And so that's a great point in regards to time. Traffic, I would say traffic is greater than time, but if you needed to as well, in theory, you could go out and actually buy traffic to accelerate the time to feedback on that point.
Yes.
And I want to go back to something that you mentioned before, and this gets back to the point of cultures as we start to wrap up. You're reminding me of like 9th grade in high school, the scientific method.
Yes.
Like this is the culture here. And I think the culture, as you mentioned before, it's like, this isn't exactly foreign. It's financial brands have been doing A/B testing on email subject lines, which directly influences open rate.
Right.
I know some have been doing A/B testing on ads, PPC ads, display ads, for example.
Right.
But if you think about the scientific method, it all starts with a hypothesis. If we do X, then we can hypothesize or we predict that Y will be true. And we predict that because, coming back to your point, we have historical analysis from all of these other A/B tests that have been run in the past. We have secret shopping data from people in the marketplace, and they're giving their subjective and objective perspective about the experience on the site and where things might be missing and what could be make it even better going forward. But it's the scientific method that really drives the cultural belief here that, yeah, marketing can be art and science collaborating together to make marketing, for that matter, even that much better. And the perception of marketing, hey, we're not just kids that play with paint and crayons. We are directly influencing the bottom line, the loans, the deposits, the assets of the organization. As we wrap up, we talked about measuring. What are we measuring to begin with in the first place? What can someone who's watching or listening go back and they can look to measure, or at least begin to benchmark where they're at today to get a basic understanding of what could be better going forward into the future?
Yeah, I think for a financial institution, it's simply ask yourself, well, what's the outcome that you want? What's the metric that matters for the growth of your organization? And that usually comes back to loans and deposits. So measuring the loans and deposits that you're getting through your digital marketing, getting through your website, and ideally, it's not just the number of people that are converting, like the number of applications completed. Yes, you need that, but you need to transform it into dollars being generated. Once it's transformed into dollars being generated, now you can start to think about ROI, and you can choose, well, there's an opportunity in this funnel, an opportunity in this funnel. Which one should I focus on? Well, focus on the one that's going to bring in the most dollars, because that's what's going to help our financial institution grow and help us to do more good for the people that we serve.
You bring up a great point, and I want to do this. I want to take this conversation and I want to expand upon it around measuring progress here when we reconvene. And the reason is you brought up this point on dollars, and this is now tying it back to our conversation here around culture, around brand versus performance. It's not versus, it's brand and performance, brand with performance. Because when you're talking now in dollars, you're now talking the language of the C-suite. You're talking the language of the CFO. When you're talking about traffic, when you're talking about clicks, even when you're talking about conversions at the C-suite level, there might be a basic understanding, but it's still a primary foreign language. The question is, so what? How did this impact loans? How did this impact deposits? How did this impact asset growth this week, this month, this quarter, this year? And when we think about culture, what really shapes a culture is a common language. And so let's continue this point on common language, measuring progress, and what's even dive deeper into the ways that we can measure progress through different lenses.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's do it, dude. Hey, it's JR. Before we wrap up, if you're ready to move from decoration to optimization, our friends over at Metrify are here to help. You don't need to blow everything up to start over from scratch. You don't need to build an entire new website to begin with. Just text me right now, 832-240-1922, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to get custom insights so that you can improve your website, boost your performance, and start turning clicks into conversions that lead to real loan and deposit growth.